Hola, hola, amiga, for the 100th time. Today we're celebrating 100 episodes. Oh my gosh, I cannot believe it. And I'm so excited for you to be here today, as this will be an episode full of reflections, really. So much has changed since episode 1. And if you've been here with me, I just want to say thank you, gracias. It has been a labor of love, but ultimately, this is much needed. A podcast like this is much needed. And so today I'm here to share you why I decided to create the podcast in the first place. If you haven't been here with me since day one, how it's really changed me and the lessons learned from it. And I'm also going to share you how I'm managing it all, because we also need to celebrate our wins and really telling y'all the realities of things. And finally, I'm going to share with you all my hopes for the future, specifically as it relates to the Viva la Mami podcast. So no te lo pierdas. Again, I'm so excited that this is the 100th episode, and stick around because I have a lot to share. Welcome to the Viva la Mami podcast. I am your host, Jessica Cuevas. I am a mother of 2 on a mission to help redefine the meaning of motherhood as a modern Latina mom. Motherhood can be a complex journey, interwoven in 2 identities that often make us feel ni de aquí ni de allá. Viva la Mami is committed to providing you with knowledge, tools, and support to navigate the challenges and triumphs of motherhood as Latina moms. On the show, we'll be discussing culturally relevant topics that will help inform and empower you in whichever season you are in on your motherhood journey. We'll be joined by Latina moms, experts and professionals who can offer advice, practical tips, relatable stories, and honest conversations. So bring your cafecito as I invite you to be a part of this space as we create comunidad about the exciting and challenging parts of being a mommy. Ahora, vámonos. Mujer, I cannot believe this is the 100th episode. Like, I honestly thought I wasn't gonna go past 10 episodes, let alone like getting this far with our 100th episode. I'm just like mind blown because, like I said, this has been a labor of love. And when I reflect about my initial thoughts really in creating a podcast, like first of all, going back to like 2 years ago when I was thinking about creating a podcast, I kept going back and forth. I remember telling Alex, like, I want to do this, but I don't know where to start, how to really start. And at that time, I remember investing on Viva la Mami in general as a blog. I remember investing on the Blogger Bootcamp by Janice Torres from Yo Quiero Dinero. And that was pretty much my inspiration for creating a podcast. Like, I have a website, I built something from this. How can I have a bigger reach? And I had all of these ideas. I was very inspired to start, but I just kept going back and forth. I remember I was like thinking about whether to do it or not. In a way, I was afraid. I was like nervous. I felt like I was such an amateur to start. This was back in the spring, summer of 2022. And yeah, I just kept going back and forth. I wasn't sure. But what I did was I bought a microphone and this is the same microphone I am still using. It was a $70 microphone from Amazon. And for those of you who are interested in starting your own podcast, I'll have it linked in the show notes because this has really been a great microphone and it's super cost effective. Like, I remember when I was with the coaching program with Janice Torres's Blogger Bootcamp program, I remember having conversations with my cohort mates about doing a podcast, and many are like, well, you should just start. And all what it takes is to make that initial move. And so I did it. I recorded my intro and outro. I recorded my first episode, and I had all of these episodes lined up for an entire month, and I recorded them with different guests as well. So I was able to secure these guest episodes, and all of them were like, yes, I am so willing to be there. And these were people that were super established in their platforms. And so this really led me thinking like, wow, this is much needed, because again, the intention is to interview Latina moms, interview Latina experts that can better inform Latinas about their motherhood journey. And so I was very inspired by that. And even though I was nervous as heck and I thought that no one would listen to this podcast, I just published the first episode. And that was back then in late September, early October, I believe, of 2022. Actually, I think I published my first episode, which was the intro, during World Podcasting Day. And y'all, now that I reflect, this was a whole different world. I was in a completely different season of life. Back then, we lived in the suburbs. I recorded out of my home office. I had a 9-to-5 job. I was a mom of one. Dieguito was about a year and a half when I started this podcast. And my gosh, like now that I reflect, like so much has happened over the course of 2 years plus 2 months, because literally I had my 2-year anniversary in October. And so, yeah, a lot has changed. But as I reflect as to why I decided to create this podcast, it was essentially because of you as Latina moms. I realized that the podcasting industry is oversaturated with so many voices, so many stories, and so many experiences, but hardly do I hear about Latina motherhood in general. And that was my frustration, because as someone who was pregnant during the midst of the pandemic, and I had my little pandemic baby when Diego was born, even though the shutdown was not fully into effect, I think things were getting a little bit more loose. I was still unsure about certain aspects of motherhood because I didn't have that community with me in real life. And I just remember scrolling through the internet, as always, Googling things, Latina motherhood, and all what I saw were images of la mamá con la chancla, la mamá furiosa, just like those stereotypes that, yes, even though they are funny, they're relatable, they're culturally relevant, at the end of the day, I wanted to be informed about how to mother in the lens of the Latina, through the lens of the Latina perspective. I wanted to know, how do you raise bicultural, bilingual kids? I wanted to know more about setting boundaries with your family as Latinas, as Latina moms. And I couldn't find anything like this. And then as I was trying to be very intentional about Latina bloggers, like most of these individuals were lifestyle type bloggers, which it's nothing against them, but I also wanted to hear their perspective and know more about what it's like to be a Latina mom in the United States. And then when I looked over at podcasts, I really didn't see any podcasts that were specific to Latina motherhood. And really my inspiration was, okay, well, I have my blog, which at the time I was very heavy on blogging, but I decided to shift over towards podcasting because, first of all, it's very easy for me to talk. It's difficult for me to write from a blogger perspective rather than telling you through an audio perspective. I hope this makes sense. But I also wanted to showcase other Latinas on the podcast where I wouldn't be able to have that opportunity had I stuck with blogging. And so I wanted to hear more stories about Latina moms. I wanted to get their perspective. And that way it changes the narrative about what it's like to be a Latina mom. This is when we can break through those stereotypes of la mamá con la chancla, of the fearing mom, of la mamá que is like Sofia Vergara and marries this, rich man. And, I wanted to interview all different types of mujeres who come from all different backgrounds, whose motherhood stories are very unique. And y'all, I've interviewed so many different types of women, from lost moms to entrepreneurs to corporate moms to Afro-Latina moms to Christian moms. Like, I have interviewed all different types of mamas, and it has been an honor to listen to your stories. And I think I'm going to cry. I'm very emotional right now because my guests have allowed and given your space and time. We're all busy mujeres, but the fact that my guests have been able to share their stories where sometimes they're triggering, they have been very vulnerable to me, and they have cried, whether if it's during the episodes or they cried afterwards. But just the fact that I have given them space, and you as a listener has given them space as well so that you can listen and hear their stories. Like, I think that speaks so much, because we have been taught to keep ourselves silent. We all know the saying, calladita te ves más bonita. And as mamás, we often fall ourselves into this trap of being this complacent mujer who has been defaulted to this gendered role. And even though we can be awesome, powerful, empowered Latina moms, sometimes we're not given that space and opportunity to really speak from our perspective and our stories. And the fact that I have been able to give that space, offer that space to Latina moms, like, this has been such a transformative process for me, and I'm sure for you too. I've also been able to interview all of these Latina and Latino experts from a variety of fields, anywhere from bilingual experts to chiropractors. I've even interviewed dads. I had Alex, my husband, on the show so that they can share their perspective as well. And all of this is so that we can be better informed as mamás. I understand that many of us get very influenced by different platforms that, yes, they have so many followership, and yes, they have a lot of resources and everything that is very niche and specific to what your needs are, but they never speak our cultura. They never speak our language, literally and figuratively, unless they are content creators or business owners who are Latinas. And I'm pretty sure that I've either interviewed them here on the podcast or I'm planning to. And if you know of any, please let me know so that way I can reach out to them. Porque I think it's also an opportunity for them to share their expertise and share their services and offers. So that way we can support these Latina-owned businesses and what they have to offer for us. Because if anything, they're the ones who are understanding about our experiences. And then that can better inform the way that we mother, the way that we parent, the way that we go about our experiences as Latina moms. And so it has also been an honor to interview all of these professionals and experts in their specific fields, porque it also helps us to be educated on how we can become better mamas. Not that I'm saying that we got to be perfect moms, because there's no such thing as that, but it's also so that we don't feel like we are alone in this entire process. This podcast has really changed me from a personal perspective to a professional perspective. Like, y'all, I don't have any tech skills, okay? Like, the only thing that I did that is similar to building a podcast was in high school. I participated in a program for high school students who get a stipend and they basically are put to work, quote unquote, but they enhance skills that are very different and unique, specifically tailored to the arts. And so for me, I was a part of this video editing program. And so I remember I got to produce and edit my whole 10-minute video. But I remember utilizing these Mac computers and the software looks super sophisticated. So that was like the only thing that I recall and really having those hands-on experiences as it relates to creating something like this. And now as I reflect, I'm like, wow, I have acquired so many skills. And in addition, this has changed me personally, as how I shared with you, just having our guests over on the show, it has really helped me have a better understanding about the Latina motherhood experience. But on a personal level, it has also helped me become a better mama, because I know that I'm not doing this alone. Whenever I feel that I am not being a good mom, like for example, a couple of days ago, I yelled at the kids because they were just being super loud. Like, I get easily triggered, very overstimulated, but then I have to remember, wait a second, this is normal. This is a normal process because you have not yet regulated yourself. The reason why is because you didn't have enough sleep. And so based on the conversations that I've had on the show with other mamas, I know that I am not the only one who is acting up this way. And that gives me some level of comfort that I am not the only one going through this. This podcast has also changed me to help elevate the voices of Latinas. And that way we can empower other Latinas or even ourselves. And so this has allowed me to really think of it as a way of building community. A lot of podcasters, what they do for their podcast is that they utilize it as a way to funnel people towards their offers, or, it's a business model. But for me, really, this podcast is more so to build community, to get to understand each other's experiences, to learn from what are some good tips out there exclusively for Latina moms. And that has always been the intention. But y'all, this has changed me as well, because I'm also learning. I'm learning through this process. I'm learning through the voices that are here on the show. I'm learning from the experts as well. And so even though I'm the host, even though I'm the one who's publishing these podcast episodes, like, I'm also with you. Like, I am learning as well. And so now that this podcast has been around for 100 episodes, the one question that a lot of people ask me is, how do you manage this? Well, I have an answer for you. I don't know. And to be honest, there have been many times when I just wanted to throw the towel and quit. But I kid you not, every time when I'm about to say, I'm going to call it quits on the business, on the podcast, something comes up, whether if it's being invited to an event or being invited to be a guest on another podcast or being asked to speak. So this obviously validates that the work that I share with you is valuable content. It's information that needs to be out there. Because as I reflect on those Google searches that I did initially about Latina moms or Latina motherhood, it was all negative stuff or very stereotypical information about Latina moms. And that's that Marianismo, that self-sacrificial kind of mujer. And yes, even though a lot of us, it's really hard to break from that, but we at least acknowledge that this exists, that we want to break from those generational curses. And that's why I'm here, to tell you and to validate your experiences as well. And the more that we are better informed and aware about our experiences, the more we're going to break out of that narrative of what it's like to be a Latina mom and break away from those negative stereotypes. And so that's one of the reasons why I keep going back. And I'm like, no, Viva la Mami is here to stay. The Viva la Mami podcast will be here for as long as I can, for as long as this runs, for as long as we're able to have podcast episodes. And the way that I have managed this is my motivation to continue on, from either getting that rating or getting that review or even getting that DM on Instagram. Like, that really validates why I am here. And so it's that motivation, that drive in terms of managing it all. If y'all want to know how I really manage, let me know. I can do a separate podcast episode about how it's like to really manage and produce a podcast. But yeah, like, full disclaimer, I do it all by myself. At this time, I don't have the means necessarily to outsource. Like I said, this is a labor of love, and this podcast is very intentional as well. Now that we are celebrating our 100th milestone on the Viva la Mami podcast, my hope for the future is to continue on with this podcast. My hope is to continue to invite guests, mamas who really want to share their motherhood stories. And these stories can be anywhere from prenatal, postpartum. It could be during the thick of motherhood, right? When raising little ones, to teenagers, even adults. I want to also interview experts, like I said, and these experts don't necessarily have to be people with credentials. It could be anyone that can better inform us on our lived experiences as Latina moms. And so I already have a full list of individuals who want to be on the show and that I have personally invited over to be guests on the show, because I also believe that their voices matter to share. These are subject matter experts, and that way they can share their expertise in different topics as it relates to Latina motherhood. And then finally, I'm also excited to still compartir with you all about how my life is going. And I know that I have shared this on Instagram as well, but I think that I also should take advantage of the podcast, because that's another form of content that I can create, and you get to see a better picture than a 30-second video. So you will still continue to hear from me as far as with solo episodes, and that way you can be in the loop as to what's going on. And my hope for the future is to continue on. Like, I am hoping that in the next 100 episodes, we get to listen to more voices, more stories, more content that is suitable for you as mamas. But I also need your help. I also would like for you to share with me, what other topics do you want me to share? What other topics do you want to listen to from other people? And so please, I almost beg you to reach out to me. I am not a robot. I'll respond to you as far as what you're looking for from this podcast, especially for those of you who have been here since day one. I really appreciate you, porque it's been a whirlwind, to be honest, in terms of how I have gotten this far. It's been an honor to have people on the show that really care about the work that they do, specifically for those guests that are experts. But it's also been an honor to create space for the mamas who want to share their stories. And so, like I said, if there's any topics, anything that you want to learn more from the Viva la Mami podcast, please feel free to email me at podcast@vivalamami.com, or you can send me a DM on Instagram, which is Viva la Mami. And that way we can be connected and you can share what you are looking for. But yeah, it's been an amazing journey. It's been one hell of a ride, let me tell you all, porque like I said, there have been multiple times when I wanted to give up. But again, I am driven by this community. I am driven by the stories that I hear. I am driven by the people that want to share what they have to offer for you as a Latina mom. I am driven by the sense that we need more representation. We need more voices to not only help elevate ourselves as individuals and as mujeres, but also to break those stereotypes that we often see in the media and that we even hear from our families. A lot of our own people perpetuate these stereotypes. And I think it's time to break from the image of what a Latina mom is, because I think it's different. I don't know about y'all. All right, amiga. Well, this was a short episode, but again, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the 100th episode. It is an honor, and I'll catch you in the next episode.
Mujer, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen to the Viva la Mami podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, will you do me a favor and follow the podcast and leave a rating and review? Hitting that follow button and reviewing my show will allow other mommies like you find this podcast. Your review will also tell me if you enjoy the show, so I would truly appreciate your thoughts. Don't forget, please share this podcast con tus amigas. Also, make sure to follow me at Viva la Mami on Instagram or visit vivalamami.com. Please note the information shared in this podcast is for educational purposes only and should not be taken as professional advice. Okay, mujer, thank you for joining y nos vemos in the next episode.